Okay, this is where I'm at. Got these I-beams as straight as I can get them together. Started working on this push plate here. The idea is that fit in between and underneath here. I just got to trim it a little bit in order to fit. This is in the very rough stages. So the whole kind of concept of my thought here is it's basically two splitters extremely close together because I have two of these 5-inch cylinders. This is the 2-cylinder Deutz from another video. I got this hydraulic pump from Surplus Center. I already fitted up to the plate that that engine already had on it when I purchased it. There we go. Trim that flange right there. So that's cupped under the I-beam. I got my other piece mocked in. Needs to get welded. I used this little 2x piece of material. It's probably like 10 gauge or 1/8 inch thick, somewhere around there. That's just in there to set a gap because I don't want this thing too tight. I mean, I understand it's gonna kind of find its place anyways and wear in, but that's just gonna set the initial movement to it. So it's all looking good. Got it all clampalized. Getting pretty charged up now. It's starting to take shape. Here we go. It's taking shape. Things aren't quite sitting exactly where they're going to be. The motor's about where I want it. Cylinders are going to be a little bit more towards the push plate. This is about the home position for the push plate. Plan to have the wedge kind of beyond the I-beams. But this is what I got going on. Definitely some clearance things. Well, still just running with it. Using what I got, trying to make some sense out of it. Got a couple engine mounts figured out. Had some stripped out threads here. I just snuck some nuts in there. I had to use a carbide bit. Get in there and make some room for that lower nut. It's supposed to be threaded in, but it came like that. That's the way I got the motor. Gotta do something on the front. Cylinders are just sitting there. They're not necessarily right where I want to have them. This is in the home position, all the way retracted. The cylinders are going to be a little further ahead. I just have to clearance this out for the hoses. Same on each side. The wedge I'm anticipating to be off the end of the I-beams. Beyond that point, I guess is what I'm saying. So you have to figure out if I'm just going to do like a single row box wedge or a double row or just all of it. Not sure. This thing should have a tremendous amount of pushing power. The stroke on these cylinders are 25 inches. And they're 5-inch cylinders. 2 of them. So that's nice. So I got to get those engine mounts done. I got to get the hydraulic pump sitting on there so I make sure I don't have anything interfere with it. I got to figure out pins for these cylinders because I don't have any, which is great. Probably going to mount the hydraulic tank somewhere in this area. I'm not sure. There needs to be a fuel tank as well. I got to find something. So 2 things that have to happen. I anticipate to have the valve somewhere here. I like it central so that you can use it from either side. I think that makes the most sense. I'm hoping to kind of rough in a few things and I can make an order and get all my parts coming. So I'm not waiting around on hydraulic fittings and hoses or whatever. This push plate came out pretty good. The way it fits on there, it's a little snug where it is right now. These beams aren't perfectly straight. They're very close, but not perfect. But of course the tolerances I left for it were pretty tight. It'll wear in though. Everything's roughed in here. Well, I went to the engine mount store. So the engine mounts are done. Just used some sidewall there, obviously, and good enough. I had some Ford engine mounts I took off a F700. That worked out pretty good. Kind of cut it in half, modified it a lot. So the motor is mounted. Kind of roughed in where I wanted the tank. Through the valve. Not in the spot where I want it, but roughly. I've got my hoses and fittings all figured out and ordered. Just had to lay things out roughly so I knew what I needed for lengths. So it all should work out pretty good. I guess primarily the only thing that's not sitting here in very rough mock-up is the fuel tank. I guess also the wedge is not on there, but we'll get there. I just wanted to try to get that all done, so I wasn't waiting around for that. There's a lot of small things to figure out, but luckily with this air-cooled diesel, at least I don't have to worry about a coolant system, coolant hoses, and all that horse piss. Well, here we are. We've got a fuel tank. It's a keg. Used half a V-belt pulley here for the bottom. That worked out pretty good. I don't know if you're kind of catching on here, but a lot of the stuff I use, it's repurposed materials. Sometimes it works out pretty good. You need something round, you find something round, and boom, bingo, done. Alright. Some other stuff still just sitting here. The next thing I'm going to work on today is getting this wedge figured out. Original plan was a single row box wedge, and now I'm thinking I'll do 2 rows just because I got plenty of material here to do that. And if it doesn't work out good, well, I can just cut the top part of it off. So my push plate is 12 inches tall. This right now it's a lot more. It's like 18 or something, or 16. So that's going to be cut down a little bit. I'm just going to keep it near the same height. I think that just makes some sense. Maybe it doesn't really matter. Probably doesn't matter. So just getting a rough idea on the size of what I want to do. I'm thinking somewhere around like 4x6 holes kind of seem to work out good with the way that I have this. So I'm going to go to town on that. I'm going to try to overbuild the business out of it, because kind of this whole thing has been a little bit overkill. So, I mean, I felt bad using 1/8 inch wall material for that fuel tank. I mean, I felt like it needed definitely 1/2 inch plate. Something real rugged for this 5 gallons. It's a lot of weight right there. Alright, so anyways, I got some pins being machined on. I found this kicking around. Just had to press it out of an old flat pulley. So this is, I think, 2 1/8, or maybe it's 2 inch. And then that hole's either 2 1/8 or 2 1/4. I don't know. It's close. It's really close. So that works. So I got to figure that out and figure out what height I want that piston to be mounted at, which I don't want it very high at all. I probably want it near center of that plate, I would assume. Don't know. Never built a splitter before. Running with it. I'm sure you'll see some mistakes here. It's fine. It'll either work or it won't, and if it won't, I'll make it work. It's great. It's the way it goes. If you ever built something, you know just what I mean. Alright, making some headway on this wedge. Using a lot of flat pieces of metal here, and you can see I got a pretty good warp going on with that top one. I heated it and bent it as straight as I could get it, and it doesn't matter, but it was just bothering me. And of course took my time with some templates. Welded this one on upside down, so it's got a forward lean to it, I guess, now, which, whatever. These things don't all line up this way, and that's on purpose. So that as it splits, there's a place for the firewood to go. These outer ones are angled out about 9 degrees. The top one is angled up. And then this piece of metal here on the bottom, that's shooting down at a pretty good angle. So it should all work. These could have been longer, but those were my cutoffs from up here, because I made this 12 inches tall, which is the same as the sled. And yeah, I would have liked that being out further, but not much. And this is definitely plenty long. I'm gonna leave it the way that it is, see how it works, and then come back and probably trim it back. I feel like there's a pretty good chance someone's gonna end up putting their hand there just because it's the furthest piece out. Maybe it would give someone a better opportunity not to put their hand there if it's more predictable being square-like. I'm not sure. That's a bad place to put your hand. Butt welded it here. There's already some existing holes. I threw a couple bolts in there. Just a piece of metal is going to fish plate it right here just to make it a little bit stronger. Having an awful time with my welder, but oh well. Of course, I'm trying to put the heat to this thing, and I want a real good weld. So I've been bouncing between my stick welder and MIG welder here and there, depending on the location. Because some of these spots, I just can't get a good angle with the stick. And I got a MIG welder sitting right there, so might as well use it. So I plan to do those 2 fish plates on both sides, same deal. There'll be a little something right here, tie that wing of the I-beam into it as well. And I was thinking maybe with this plate I got in between the I-beams down here, going from that flat to probably the back side of this plate here. It's totally out of the way of everything, and it might just try to keep this wedge attached. Because I have a feeling with the amount of pushing power that's there, it's either going to rip this thing off or it's going to make firewood. One of the two. So I'd rather overbuild it once so that I don't have a bunch of cracked welds and have to redo, you know, a majority of it and then some to make it a little bit better. I'm going to just try to make it the best that I can with what I got. So I'm going to try to wrap this up. Waiting on hydraulic fittings, lines, and such. Waiting on a couple pins still. I got a pin for the front, so I could potentially get into that. Definitely not looking forward to that. Got this bushing welded in. Got a lot more gusseting to do. Got the cylinders back in here mocked up. Sitting on some 3-inch square tube. I'm going to do a little something downward. Another pin bushing over here as well. I was going to use this pin. And I welded that bushing in there. And it's a 1/16 too big. So, who would have thought? Good thing I got 2 of these. So, I can still get it pinned. It'll just be 2-pieced, which, that's fine. These pins are totally overkill anyways. It's just the application that the cylinders come from is why I'm working with that. Had to do this little cutout. I anticipated this, which it's fine. So, make sure it clears the cylinder. This is the fully retracted position, which this isn't necessarily as far back as the plate will go. It probably is, but I kind of forgot where I left that at. But this doesn't matter. It'll matter when I hook the other end. So, it's gaining. I trimmed the top of the wedge here. It looks way better. I think that would be a lot safer. Not that the thing is all about safety, but I think it'd be good to at least try. Got this gusset down here. These other gussets here on the corners. Same thing on the other side. Got a couple bolts to match the other side. I just had to drill 2. So since I did that, I feel like I should put all 4 bolts in. It'll just be a matter of drilling 4 more holes. Total overkill. It really doesn't need it, but it's bothering me just looking at it when it could take a bolt. I'm gonna finish out the sled here. Still waiting on the pins. If I can get a cross piece in here, and I got 4 of these, so just have to figure out where the cross piece will go, and I'll just simply bolt to it. It should be plenty adequate. I'm assuming that's probably like a 5/8 bolt the way the holes are right now. I mean, I could drill them out larger and use 3/4, but with the thing vertical, the bolts really aren't seeing any force whatsoever, so I'll probably just leave it the way that it is. I'll have to make sure whatever cross piece I use here is extremely rugged, just to match the theme of the rest of this unit. I probably should come up with a name for this thing, since it's, well, in my eyes, completely overkill. But, oh well, it's not a priority here. I can tell you what's made this job a hell of a lot easier. I have not always had one of these. Recently acquired that. That thing is tits out of 10. Cuts all sorts of stuff. It works really well with a 1/8 wide blade. I think normally drop saw blades are like 3/16, but with a thinner blade it takes out less material. It takes no time to lop this stuff up. I've nearly used it entirely, other than a couple 4-inch grinders for just doing the little fine-tuning stuff and just cleaning up material. But definitely been the ticket. Got some 1/2-inch plate here. I had 2 small ones, so I just made a bigger one, welded them together. I cut these gussets out of some large C-channel. It's probably like 5/8 by 1/2. It's basically angle iron now, but I was just using it because of the thickness. Thing is wicked rugged. I got one side welded. I gotta weld this other side. I just have this straight edge here. Just to get it kind of close, I have this one tacked. I can take the outer one out, get it welded up fully as much as I can. I can't, there's only about 1.75 inches in between here, so I can't get in there to weld the inside of this. I think it should be plenty rugged enough. The main structure of the I-beam is in the center, so that's why both of them are turned towards the center so that they're lined up with the I-beam. Drilled some holes here. There's some extras there, and I got a couple bolts just sitting in there, but these pieces will go on like that. I have 4 of these, so it's just what I had kicking around. They already fit the pins, so that's why I'm going with it. Gaining. I still gotta do the outer bush here. Gotta go all the way around this. I got some more really large angle iron. I'm thinking about positioning kind of like that. I think that might work out good. Don't know. Figure it out. It's getting to be the final mock-up of the cylinders. Got the push plate all done. I don't have pins for it. I mean, I guess I kind of do, but I need to finish them off and get some retainers on them. I'd like to do a straight pin all the way through, but the one I have on hand is a 1/16 too large. I have 2 shorter pins, which should be sufficient. So I still need to get my back pins here. Got that just thrown together. I need to modify the heads of these bolts a little bit, just flatten off a spot, just so that they'll sit flat on there. I think it looks pretty awesome. A little bit of a clearance issue down inside here. I knew this was going to be a little bit tight, but it's working out a little tighter than I would like, so might have to address that. Still debating if I want to throw some wheels under it. My thought has been to put a center pick on it. Not sure. Very indecisive with this. Been just kind of running with it with what I have. Still need to mount the tank and the valve, but for the most part the main action here is done. Debating on throwing wheels under it or not. It's a little narrow to just skid it around. I am sure it'll tip over. I think the footprint of it's only about 16 inches wide at best. If I put wheels under it, I'm going to want them far back here out of the way, and I like having the hitch on this end. I think it makes all the sense in the world, so that when you have it hooked onto something, you can leave it hooked onto something, split the wood, and drive away from the pile. I don't know why they build splitters backwards all the time, but it makes no sense to me. So I'm just trying to build this thing in a way that makes sense to me. Went through surplus center. So I'm getting ready to plumb this. I'm going to start by getting the tank part done, suction line, work my way down from there. I got the tank all ready to go, cleaned up. Got the bungs welded on here. Should work out just fine. Those are on the top anyways. One's for a return, the other one is for a vent. You gotta have some type of vent. This is from surplus center as well. So, got the valve mounted here. Seems to be pretty good. Everything moves just like it should. Worked out pretty good clearance wise. I think it's at a height that I like. I don't care for that lever having that bend to it. I mean, sure, it works good if you're on this side, but I'd rather it just be straight so that it's no different side to side. Put it in the center so that no matter which side of the machine you're on, it doesn't matter. The fuel tank setup. This is actually the center of a rim. So this is one rim. I just cut all the way down it on both sides. That was a chore, but it's nice to already have the contour instead of doing that out of some flat stock, which I could have, but that's the way I decided to do that. It's really rugged stuff. It was like a dump truck rim. So it's a bunch of boring stuff, but I'll get that done. Got the tank mounted. Just put a strap of stainless on there and welded it back there. So that was pretty simple. Battery box is all done. Got a couple janky battery cables there. That'll do the job. I might have to come back on the electrical because there's some things like this unit, I don't know what the deal is. I know that has to do with the throttle. I don't know if that's like one set speed and you put power to this thing and somehow uses oil pressure to operate. I'm not sure, but whatever. I'm just going to focus on the hydraulic stuff for right now, get that done. I don't have the cylinder sitting on there because I need them out of the way for welding in this mount here. I'm getting there. Alright, I'm getting there. I'm trying. It's been a lot of Sundays. There, a little bit of mom spaghetti laid out. I had to weld these couplers to the existing fitting to adapt that. I'm sure I could have had a line made, but that's the way I decided to go. Not the way you should do things, but it's the way I do things sometimes, I guess. So, I'm short a couple pieces. Go figure. I anticipated this. I just need low pressure hoses for the return here and suction over here. Otherwise, I have every single other hose. I can't believe I estimated this good. This hose is definitely way too long, and I don't know. I guess that's just going to loop right there. Maybe I could route it differently, but I think that just the way it is kind of works. So, got my pins today. Gotta cut some pins for the front there. I got two short ones. I'll just make that do. And very minor stuff. It's gonna see wood today. Gotta get some oil for it and get this puppy knocked out. Hopefully I got the lines routed the right way. I normally like it to where when the valve's forward, that goes forward, and when the valve's back, it goes back. It's just simple. It works for me. I don't know if that's the way I got it, but it's just a matter of changing two hoses one way or the other. I kind of have them crisscross in there. It's crisscross the same way. Just, I don't know. I thought it was cool. But hopefully they don't rub too bad anywhere, but we'll find out. They're not totally sitting where they should because the pins are not in them. Gotta do an oil change on the engine. Gotta change the fuel filter. So that's some simple stuff that needs to happen. It's a lot of little things today. I am so excited to see this thing do the stuff. Let's get at her. Finally getting these cylinders pinned up. So this is what I was waiting on. This pin getting machined here. Both ends are 1 3/4 inches. And I think the center bit is 2 or 2 1/8. Anyways, just gonna go in like that. Got this other piece here. It's the same as the other. Goes in like that. That can bolt. And that's the right size on that pin's OD for this ID. Had to trim the back of this cylinder a little bit. That won't matter to this on a snowbank, but just need to have that fit in there good. I kind of had the lack of clearance, but it doesn't matter at all. So I'm gonna trim that. I have one pin cut for the front, so this hole is straight through. Of course, things aren't really lined up at the moment. But anyways, this pin's basically going to go halfway, and then I'll have another one that will do the other half. It'll be very simple, and to retain it, I'll just put a strap across here and just weld each end, and if I ever have to take it apart, just grind that strap off, piece of cake. Love how this return hose come out, lined up great. I mean, it's only slightly cockeyed. Suction line worked out okay. I'm surprised it made that transition. I was struggling with it kinking right here, but just grabbed on it with some channel locks, and there's some wire that's embedded in the wall of this tube, and squeezed on it, and I was able to work that kink out. It wasn't immediately kinking, making this shape, but in order to get it in this location, it did kink, but it's good. Definitely got to watch out for that. Decent. So this engine has not been started since the last video I did on it, which if you don't know, I did a will it run on this engine. And as you can expect, it ran. So here we are doing something with it. But anyways, I don't know an awful lot about it other than it ran. I just really serviced the intake. Just cleaned out the oil in it, filled it back up. So now I gotta clip it back on. I have to refigure out the kill on this engine. I'm pretty sure it was this piece. So I have to hold that in. I think I did with a pair of vice grips crossed here or something. So I gotta do that. And then this is the throttle. There was a bolt that was through here and I took it out because it's not the way it was supposed to be, but I might have to put it back in there because I'm assuming that's holding the throttle in a higher RPM, like operating RPM. I'm not sure. It might be idling position now. Of course, there's this apparatus here. There's a power and negative wire there for that little solenoid. And I think that tube, well, that tube goes right here. I don't know if it's fuel pressure related. I mean, this is the injection pump mechanism. So, I don't know. Because, well, actually, it's tied right in here to this T, to this, where my oil pressure gauge is. That is oil. So that's oil pressure that is actuating that thing, doing something with the throttle. I don't know if that's supposed to act as a governor or it's just using the oil pressure, you know, to actuate the cylinder. It's probably the way that it is. I'm hoping that it is not a governor thing and it doesn't work, because that'd be very unfortunate because I really need that. So anyways, I gotta tighten up these battery connections. And I didn't really have to bleed it before. I just cranked on it, ran the hand pump, and it fired up. So I guess I'm going to do the same thing again. This thing doesn't make much sense. Hey, let's put a nut inside here, and I can't get a tool on it. Alright, I'll fix that. There, that's fixed. Well, I've got 15 gallons in this hydraulic tank. It should be enough to run it. I spilled a little bit down the side. Now it's just evaluating it here before I fire it up. That there's a little bit of oil here, because once when I start it, the major thing is going to be looking for leaks. But currently, oil in here. There's oil in this suction hose. I don't see any residue, so things are looking pretty good. It is very helpful that the fittings I had to add were on top, because even if there is a pinhole, I doubt it's going to leak. These ones on the other hand might just become a pain in my neck. I'm sure it's a cat fitting on the other side. I don't know, probably could get a hose made, but it might just turn into a lot of money. And maybe this could be the simple solution, because these are really cheap. These hydraulic hoses with a pipe thread are very cheap as well, let alone you can get them anywhere. Let's just bump it here, see if this is going to work for us. That sounds like it's going to work for us. So now I just got to hold in this piece. That mechanism pushed in, that should be the shut off. I have a feeling this switch here is for like a enrichment for starting to help aid the start. But I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure. It holds down and the engine's off. It's in a location that would make sense for that. So I guess now I'm going to give it a go, see if it starts up. I got to be really observant of oil blowing out of the back of this thing. I got to come over here, check out the oil pressure, make sure that's fine, which it should be. Motor ran before. I got to do an oil change on it. It's got oil in it. The oil in it looks just fine. It's a little bit low, but it's in the safe zone. So I'll start it, and I'm going to be looking for leaks. I'm not going to run the valve right away. I'm going to let it circulate. As it circulates, it's going to be pumping oil from the pump through the valve, not to the cylinders, but it'll be going through this filter. So if there's any initial debris in that main path, we're going to be catching it. And I don't know, I got to start small. So this is starting small, making sure that thing's running good. The basics are not leaking. Then from there, I'll run the cylinder. Probably going to throw some grease or something on these I-beams. And once when things are working good, I'll just cycle it and just see if this is going to work. It's been a long time coming, and I have a feeling I might get disappointed, but maybe not. Don't know. Let's give it a go. Oh. Oh, we got all the oil fresheners. So it is down at idle. That bolt was holding it up. So we'll let it idle. No leaks. No leak. Okay. Yeah, that thing just runs like a champ. So this tank isn't vented. I mean, sort of is with this thing, but I'll have to do something there. Just gonna see. I don't know how well you can make that out, but this is the return line right here. So there's oil pumping back into the tank. That's a very good sign. Never know if the pump was the wrong rotation or something, so no, I verified that. Thing is just running sweet. This is the third pair of ice grips. Better. What is your deal? Our vice grips moved for the shutoff. So that's why the motor stalled out. Don't worry, I got the zip ties. So, kill's fixed. The throttle is still janky. Yeah, that helps. Okay, we have a little vacuum on our fuel tank. I'll fix that too. My goodness gracious. Alright, let's try it for the 1600th time. Alright, what, really? Alright, well, let's just take this moment of silence. Look how awesome this looks. 2 cylinders. I got some oil there. That was from when I was doing this originally. I put some oil on the I-beams because when I built that, I slid it on, and these I-beams, they're very close to parallel, but it actually tapers down a little bit, and I was having a hard time beating that thing over there, so threw some oil on there at the time. That doesn't need to be in there. Okay, no, that doesn't either. Get that out of there. Alright, so what I got going on now, that's holding that little release valve. That's for pressure because it's a keg. Anyways, it's vented. And this switch definitely helps. That's an enrichment for starting. The throttle kind of freed up. That cylinder kind of was jamming up before. Now it moves much easier. The kill is held in with vice grips and 2 zip ties, but it's not firing up. It's smoking out of the stack, so we must be close. I run the hand pump, and I'll try to start it like normal again. I might possibly grab a can of ether, give it a little whiff. Alright, so I pumped that a few times. Doesn't seem to be doing much now. Yeah, I really doubt I'm wrong about that kill. I don't think it has to be out. Pretty sure it has to be in. I hate to be an idiot, but I am what I am. I got a can of this from a truck I bought the other day. Try that. Oh, yeah. Well, I guess that starter's a problem. actually has a pretty good speed to it. I didn't want it super fast, but I didn't want it snail slow. Okay, here's 3 pieces of wood I'm going to split. Here's a cherry, it's pretty easy to split, about 16 inch. Maple, about 12. Yellow birch, about 15. This tends to be the hardest thing in my area to split. All 3 of these have very straight grain, so should go through like a piece of cake, but I gotta start somewhere and see what this thing will do. What blew out? The filter. That filter O-ring blew out. Son of what just happened was this thing got all the way to the end of the stroke, and you reach peak pressure basically when you bottom it out, and when I went to go back, a lot of fluid decided to discharge back to the tank. I can probably undo this and fix that O-ring right quick and the thing will be operational again. But I guess for now I might have to bypass this because it's not enough. Filters. Oh well, how lame is that? The bottom part of the filter is spinning separate of the top. So I guess this filter is junk. Alright, so basically it's like a bomb went off. Absolute disaster in here. I've had enough with this thing. It's given me trouble in the past. I hung on to it, kept thinking I'd use it for something, and now here I am having trouble with it again. It's going to be one of those things. This, I am very certain, is rated for 21 gallons per minute. Our pump is around 16, 17 gallons per minute, and I'm sure that's a max number. And with a surge like what popped this one, you know, I'm sure it was more than that, and this isn't an ideal sizing right here. It should stay 1 inch all the way, but I'm having to adapt it down to 3/4 since that's what this fitting is. You want your return larger than your in feed, which this one is a 3/4. This is 1 inch, this other one's 1 inch, but we're piped down right here. So when you have a restriction, it's going to build pressure, and that's what we had. We had pressure on something that should be low pressure. Anyways, went out back, had an old John Deere baler filter housing. Gonna adapt that on there. So that's got barb fittings on both sides. This is an SAE style. So it's kind of a pain in my neck that that's different. Well, I do want a different size, but being that it's SAE, it's a different style. So instead of sealing where the thread is tapered, it's sealing on an O-ring. But anyways, this is a piece of cake. It's going to hook right into that hose just fine. This other side, I just need to adapt it. So that's where I'm at. So I'll probably see what I can find for stuff. If I'm lucky, I have enough rubber hose to do the same thing here over here. I'd rather use the high pressure one because it's rugged and I got it. But whatever, forget it. Forget it all. I'll just get it done. Yep. So I have this John Deere filter housing adapted in here. Don't tell the old man I stole it off his square baler. Anyways, unfortunately, with that SAE adapter to pipe thread, it had to still become 3/4 pipe thread to get to the 1 inch. So yeah, being a return side, it should not be piped down like that. But being that that is a high pressure hose, it should be pretty forgiving. But once when it goes into the filter, there is a bypass in there. This is a much larger filter housing. It should be sufficient. And then after that, I have this low pressure hose. I think it's good for like 200 PSI maybe. But anyways, there's no restriction to it, so that'll be totally fine. Weak link potentially could be the filter, but it should be just fine. This thing should flow plenty. I have the same filter on my log truck, same size hydraulic pump, and that has way more actions and things going on. So I'm pretty confident this is going to work just fine. So now I think what I'm going to do is I have to face this troublesome problem of how am I going to move this thing around. I made it extremely heavy, which, oh well. Plan to do a center pick on it. That was the original thought. Another thought was throw a trailer axle under it, kind of like a traditional wood splitter. But I like the height that it's at right now. So if I throw a trailer axle under it, it's going to become higher. I don't want to put an axle through it or jack it up in any way. So I could put an axle all the way at the end of it, but then my hitch is going to be on the splitter side. And to me, that's backwards. I hate it when they're like that, and they seem to be like that most of the time. But anyways, I don't know. I'm trying to face this problem. I don't want wheels where I work, and I don't want it any higher than it is. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to start by just doing a center pick on it. And if I don't like that, I can do something different. I'm sure I'll skid this thing around. Okay, so this is how I went about finding center of this thing. It has a solid rod under there. I just jacked it up. I put my weight on it. It tips. So it's very, very close. Every time I break out the tubing bender, it reminds me of 9th grade math class. So here's the hoop I can start it on. The pipe's a little bit short. But in order to go 180 and you do multiple bends, it needs to add up to 180. Yeah, it dawned on me. You know, the math thing and whatnot. 45, 90, 45, boom, 180. So I'm getting there. Had to find center of this thing. It's pretty well dressed out with all the stuff that's going to go on it, so the weight should be pretty accurate. And I put a metal rod under there. I had jacked it up. And with that metal rod, it's very close. It's just barely off. Just putting some pressure on it myself, I can balance this thing. But I'm not shooting to balance it out on the rod. I just need a reference. So I need to be a little bit over to the right, which is fine. It's pretty well right where I was mocking up the tube anyways, which I was doing the tube first. So that's working out pretty good. Not really a fan that it's basically directly over the fill for the hydraulic oil. That's kind of lame, but I use a funnel for it anywho, so oh well. I'll have to use that short pipe, put the same bend in it as I got right there into that pipe, so I can finish out the other side. I'm not sure if I'll tag in to, well, probably not the handle, but this other side here, there's plenty of good material to hook into just to make it even more rugged, I might just have a third link right there. It probably would end up offset, but I don't really want to make that spot too busy. This should be sufficient for lifting this thing. Not sure what the wall is on this pipe. Of course, it's some type of plumbing pipe. It should be fine to weld. The wall on it, it's definitely no less than 1/8 inch, so I'm not sure. We'll figure it out though. It'll either work or it won't. If it doesn't, well, the whole thing can drop, but what's going to break? It's pretty stout. Okay, so I got my center pick frame all made up. Just bent up some 2-inch pipe. This one isn't structural, but it helps it from, well, I guess when you hit it, it would kind of vibrate. Fix that in a hurry. Normally if you have things that kind of vibrate over a long distance like that, they'll crack and whatnot. So that does a lot of good. Got this stiffener in here. So pretty confident that will be plenty rugged to pick the thing up. I tried making it symmetrical for the most part. And got a short chain just hooked up here in case I want to skid it forward. And I got a couple tow hooks, actually from an S10 truck, but I was thinking potentially with a tractor with a 3-point hitch and you put your drawbar across, you'd be able to back into this and kind of clip into it. You could lift the whole thing and drag it ahead. So that might work good. We'll find out. Still need to do some outriggers. I don't know, forgetting about that. I got this shut off here that I made up. I have a bunch of stuff. Just kept putting things together till it did what I want, so pretty pleased with that. So good enough. And then I had to go through this throttle. I originally thought that this wasn't original to it, but this jankety thing is. So just had to replace a couple bolts in it and whatnot. And gandering at this unit here, I think I got it figured out. So got a solenoid here, and you'd have like 60 psi of oil pressure, and that would extend the cylinder all the way. And what that would do is bring the throttle all the way to a predetermined stop up there. It's adjustable. So basically you're going to go from idle to an operating RPM, and that's it. You would have the two options. I'm guessing that's the way it goes. The line that goes over to the injection pump, I don't know if that has to do with like the shutoff, possibly. I don't think it varies it in any way, but I'm not sure if this thing works. I think that's melted plastic right there. And normally when you have a solenoid like this, you should hear it click. I don't hear it click. Normally you should see a small arc at the end of the alligator here, but it's not doing that. I'm very certain it's melted. Maybe it caught on fire or something, not sure. So that might be a problem for trying to get that to work. I wish it did, because geez, the throttle would just be a matter of a toggle switch. So I'm gonna get fired up and try it. Maybe it doesn't make a sound. See what it does. Apparently I have all the oil pressure. Seems concerning. Alright, well that makes no sense. For some reason my shutoff doesn't do a single thing. Interesting. I don't really understand that, but I was able to go just a little bit further, below idle, and it shut off. So maybe I just wasted a lot of time with that. I don't know. I don't know what the deal with that is. It was shutting the motor off before, but the throttle was all janked up to where it went below idle, which the shutoff should always shut it off no matter your throttle position. So that's interesting. I guess maybe I see why they had enough of the forklift with this engine in it. It seems like that throttle was just a pain in the dingus. Yeah, alrighty then. I guess what I'm going to do for the time being is I'm going to figure out a temporary way I can get the throttle to do what I need it to do, and I'll just call it good enough for right now. Something like that. I don't know. I don't know why we have all of the oil pressure now. That's unique. That thing is very, very high. It's not that cold out at all. Today's 90 degrees. Maybe these motors are like that, but it wasn't like that the other day. So, interesting. I don't know. Don't know. Made in Germany. That explains it. So instead of doing some nice, extravagant throttle, I just made it more janky. So, when I got it, they just shoved a lag bolt into that slot there. This piece I threw on. But now I can just, you know, throw that in there, and that's all of it. So, that's what I need. You know, I need all of it. And then I need none of it. Which, this would be idle. And a little bit further seems to kill it. I don't know what's going on with the kill thing, because, I don't know. The mechanism still allows that plunger to go just as far, but it's not shutting it off now. And I do find it weird that the oil pressure is higher than it was before. The little throttle thing, that doesn't do nothing, so I'm just going to leave it the way it is. It's a wood splitter. It's fine. I'd like to get more educated about it. The problem is I don't know what forklift this came out of, because I am sure this linkage and throttle design is specific to the forklift, not the engine. Let alone, I can't find much information about Deutz engines, and some of it is just in a language I can't read. That's a dilemma. Let's throw some paint on and get it to work. I tell you, sometimes it's the little things. A little notch right there, that's new. Apparently, it just needed a little bit more. You gotta love lost footage. Anyways, been using it, unfortunately. Lost that footage. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but it's not straight anymore. It's only those two parts of the wedge. I guess if you're calling that 1 and 2. So this material is 3/8. The uprights over here that are not bent are 1/2 inch. But of course, they're kind of doing different things on different parts of the piece of the wood. I have put things through this thing that it should probably not split, and it does just fine. Totally baffled on that. Anyways, I heated the business out of this with a tiger torch, and I pounded it down with a hammer. That's why it's kind of messed up, but it is a lot straighter than this one, and that's how that one was in the opposite direction. It's kind of interesting that these all bent one way like a fan blade. So this is kind of a difficult spot to get into, and I do not have torches. Did this with a tiger torch. That's just one of those, I guess, like tar torches or like weed torches. I'm not sure exactly the use for it, but I use it for heating up stuff like that. So I got the saw. But I can't fit the saw in here. But the saw cuts this stuff very easily. So I'm thinking I need to take this metal out and put in thicker metal. And in order to keep this thing working properly, let's just kind of draw it out simply here. This area right here widens as it goes backwards. And my centerpiece of metal is 3/8 wide. So as the piece is split, and because it widens, it has a place to go, but I can't just put a thicker piece of metal in at the same position as this one, because it's going to split and not have enough room if that makes sense to you. But anyways, in order to put a thicker piece of metal in a nutshell, it needs to be set further back. So I mean, obviously, sure, a 1-inch piece would work great, but it would be so far back to where it wouldn't have enough contact to the rest of the framework here. So I did throw on a piece of metal for my skid there. It's covered in dirt, but I had a couple tack welds on it. Now it's for the stability, but that piece over there is 3/4. 3/4 is twice as thick as this stuff. So if this stuff worked for 3 chords, I would think the 3/4, it will do better. I mean, this other stuff's 1/2 inch. So anyways, I gotta get that cut out. I'm just gonna hog that right out. I'm gonna be shooting to be right beside the weld. New piece is gonna be set further back. And then these other ones, I guess I'm gonna have to get in there with a 4-inch grinder around. It's definitely gonna be a treat trying to get this thing out of here, but I'm gonna do what I can. I really wish I had torches. So the way I'm going to go about removing this is I'm going to use my demo saw and cut something out sort of like this, right through the top wedge here, just because I can't fit in here with anything. It's a real pain. And then these other ones shouldn't be so bad since they're half the length, and I'll do that with probably a 4-inch grinder. I'll have to grind my welds off, and I'll get my new metal in here. Alright, I got the new metal in there, 3/4 inch steel. So here I have 4.5 inches. Now from here to here is 9 inches, so if there's a 9-inch wide block going through here, and when it's split by the second wedge, you can see that right there, as it's going through, there's a little extra room. That's where the block needs to go. You gotta make sure you have that, otherwise your piece binds in. So top to bottom here is 12 inches, so this is showing 6-inch this long way. And now when it comes into that wedge right there, as it splits, there's clearance, tons of clearance on the bottom. Top side here, as it splits, the top plate is actually tipped up, so that's where the clearance is gained. As the piece goes back, there's obviously more clearance than there is in the front. Same thing on the bottom. I mean, the bottom plate I angled way down, so there's all the clearance in the world. So right now this is all tacked together, the new material. So I set it further back, and the reasoning for that is because of this taper that I'm looking at right now. With the wider material, it needs to be further back in order to still have the clearance. So it's tacked up right now. Tomorrow I got a friend coming down that is a professional welder, and he's gonna put the juice to it. Nice to have a professional do it. Are you gonna weld it? Thanks, bud. You can weld her up. Put the rod to it. Right? How's it look to you? thing is awesome. I am very pleased with it. It's turned out real well. Definitely gotta do something different on the throttle. The return filter, that's yet to be dealt with. I don't have time for it right now. It's splitting great. Wedge is holding up awesome. Things are starting to polish up a little bit, kind of wear in. I know some people use some type of crane, I don't know, thing. I guess it's like nylon. Not really sure. Has to do with the push plate. I just went the old school way. Steel to steel, it's just fine. These cylinders leak a little bit, and it's kind of like an automatic oiler. But whatever. Put at least another cord, maybe 2 through it since fixing the wedge. Things are just working awesome. So if you want to see another video on this thing, let me know. I can definitely foresee doing a couple things to it. The filter situation, that figured out. Throttle situation. I'd like to do a hood over it. Maybe make kind of some type of protection bar around this thing just in case, you know, you back into something or whatever. It does kind of skid around. You know, the wood's pushing out that side. It does move it around some. It's not a big deal. I kind of like that. Always getting away from the pile. I would like to do a hitch and maybe an axle. It's been a thought. It would be nice to have this thing more mobile. The height is awesome. Just so many things about it are working great. I'm really just surprised, actually, that it's working so well. So anyways, you know, let me know. That's just a handful of things I can think of right off the bat for improvements. But, you know, it's probably a long enough video right here. So, if you like this type of stuff, this is what I get into. I know I don't post much, but when I do, I like to think I'd make it count.